This is the Rich Client application exercise in C#. We are building a WPF application, a rich client application. WPF is one of the two main Windows client applications available in the .NET framework. We have WPF and then the Windows Forms framework. This one's using WPF, you can tell that here. Also, when we get to the code and we start getting into the project itself, we'll start seeing that. So to start off, as typical, I'm gonna run the tests, and we should get a failure. And we do. We get a not implemented exception. If we look at the test itself, there's not a lot going on inside this test. We have basically a single test. We're creating a MirrorScreen object that is a new instance of the test MirrorScreen class. We're setting a property text typed by user, so that is simulating the user typing that we're testing. We're submitting, that's simulating a button click, and then we're saying the reverse text that was displayed to the user should be testing in reverse. This is not working, so if I go to definition on submit, we can see here is a non-implemented exception. So this definitely explains why this isn't working. Now looking at this class, I've got two abstract properties, one for the text typed by the user and one for the reverse text displayed to user. So I'm going to use these two properties as I implement this method, and then we'll finish up by making the test pass. So let's start off here in submit. Effectively what we need to do here is we need to get the text that was typed by the user. Now the test has already submitted the text itself. They've already typed that in for us and they've clicked the button. So we just need to grab that information. So we're going to grab the text from this property, text typed by user. We're then going to reverse it. And then finally we're going to display it by setting the property reverse text displayed to user. I'm going to do this in 3 lines. This is probably something you could do in a single line. I'm going to do it in 3 lines here. So say var text equals this.text typed by user. That gets the text out. Now that I have that, I need to reverse that. So let's say the reverse text equals text.reverse.toArray, and then I need to put that into a new string. And then finally, I need to set the reverse text property. So reverse text displayed user equals reverse text. That's really all there is to the submit function. So again, we get the text, we reverse it, and then we display it back to the user. Now, if I run the test, I'm still going to get a failure. The reason I'm going to get a failure is, let me go back to this. So there's our failure. The reason I'm going to get a failure is, again, notice that these properties are abstract. That means there's a class that derives from MirrorScreen, which is an abstract class, that implements these properties, and that's where the problem is. So looking back, we've got this test MirrorScreen class. So let me go to the definition on that. You can see we do derive from MirrorScreen. We've overridden these, and here are the exceptions that are happening inside the getter and setter. So here's really the problem of what's going on. Now inside my test, all I really need to do is hold on to the value. So I can create fields, or I can do automatic properties. I'm going to do both real fast. So initially, assuming I want to create fields, I'll create a private string reversed text displayed to user, and then I'll do another one for the other property. So here are my fields, my backing fields for these properties. I'm going to put these on new lines so we can see them a little bit better. And so my get on the reverse text is simply going to return the reverse text field, and my setter is going to set that to value. Value is a special argument that comes in on the setter of a property. And I just do the same thing here. I don't need the keyword. So here is basically the property with the fields. So we've got our backing fields. So let's run this. And now that I've implemented that, we do get a pass. So now our test is passing. Now I mentioned that this is one way to do it. In C#, we can also use something called automatic properties. So this code is a little more code than we need to write in C#. I can use shorthand. I can get rid of my fields and simply use get set with semicolons. And this creates what's known as an automatic property. An automatic property does what we just had. It creates backing fields for these properties, returns the value from the field, and sets the value to the field using value. So this code effectively is the exact same thing we had before. So now if I run my test again, we are still passing. And that's exactly what I'd expect. So that gets the test working. Now the last part of this is actually get the WPF app working itself. There's a couple of ways to do this. One, I can hit the F5 button in Visual Studio. That will debug the application, and the selected application to run is in bold over here. So that's the WPF app. The other thing I can do is hit this big green WPF app play button up at the top. So either one will work and it'll run the application. Now looking at this, there's nothing here. What we need to do is we need to create some text box, a button, and then the reverse text display somewhere on here. So that's what we're trying to do. So let's go and open up the WPF app, and looking inside the code, main window.xaml is the form itself, and I can move around. So here's a blank canvas, and on the section below is the actual markup for it, and right now it's empty. And then the code behind for it is the C# class, and there's a lot going on in this class. We've got a main window mirror screen, which derives from MirrorScreen. This plays the same role as the test mirror screen, but this time it's specific for our main window. So it's a mirror screen specific to main window. We'll come back to that in a moment. We've got our main window and it has our mirror screen, but it doesn't really have anything else. So we're going to use these two together to create our form inside WPF, and then bind the controls and the events to what we need to do. Now, to do this, you're probably going to need to do some research. If you don't know how to use WPF app or WPF, then we can just do a quick internet search. So let's look for that. Let's say WPF, create a simple form that has a text box and a button. So here is a Stack Overflow. So simple solution, they've got a stack panel with a text box and a button. Stack panel is probably more than what we need. Here's using grid, and we had a grid, so we've got a text box and a button. So I'm going to grab these, I'm going to copy these out. I'm going to go back to our XAML. This is going to be inside the grid, so let me paste these in. So here's a text box, and then here's our button. And the button's all the way over on the right. Now it's got a horizontal alignment right, so not bad, not bad. I think we can do a little bit better. So one of the things we want to do is on the button, we want to set the text for it. So looking here, we can look at other properties. So in WPF, we could use text, or we can use content. I'm going to say content, and this says reverse text. Just whatever I want to display there. Let's get rid of the horizontal alignment right. That's throwing me off. Let's just drag this around a little bit. There we go. And now let's also, I'm going to zoom in and we're going to increase the size. That looks a little bit better. All right, so we've got our text box, we've got our button. Now we're also going to need some place to display the value. Now the other thing I can do is in the toolbox panel over here, and if you don't see it, you can go to the view and then hit toolbox. So in toolbox, we have common WPF controls and all WPF controls. Your computer might take a minute or two to load all of these up, but if we look at common, there is a label here, and that will let us display some text. I'm going to drag that over. Now that I've got that, let me again increase the size a little bit, and now we've got our label that we can use. Now finally, to use these in the C# code, I'm going to need to give them names. So let's say name equals my text box. This is the input text box. And my name for my label is output label. So we have an input text box and output label. And then finally, on button, we're going to need the click event. So in order to do that, there's a couple of ways to do this. The easiest way is to double click on the button. That will generate an event handler that's the default event for that control. So I'm going to double click, and this creates my button click event so I can do something. So now I've got everything on the form that I need to wire it up. Let's run the app. Let's make sure it looks okay. And here it is. We've got our text box, so it's really small text. Our button is not showing up, so let's clean some of this up a little bit. Let me get rid of the width and the padding and the height, the font size. In fact, I'm going to get rid of most of these properties. I'm going to let it just display straight out. Okay, we'll keep the width, padding. That height at 20. That's not bad. All right, let's try that now. Get rid of the margin on the button because that again is. Let's make this 200 as well. Let's make it about 100. So I'm just playing with these values to get it to lay out nicely. Let's drag this back over to the right. All right, let's see if that looks any better. All right, the text box looks better. I still don't see my button. It shows up when I maximize, but otherwise it's not there. There we go. We've got this margin again. Oh, the margin is adding in. All right, I don't like what it's doing. I'm going to delete my button, and I'm going to use the toolbox to drag a button back. Let's just move this here. rewire my button click event handler back up. Let's see if this looks any better. There we go. That's nicer. All right, so we've got our text. And then hit, and nothing's happening. So now we need to wire everything up. Now that we've got the form looking the way we want it to, I'm going to go back to the C# code. All we really need to do in the button click event is call MirrorScreen.submit. Now this isn't going to work because the MirrorScreen, the reverse text display to user, and the text type by user are both not wired up. So let's show that really fast. So if I type some text in here, it's going to blow up. I get this exception here. So not what I'm looking for. What we need to do is we need to wire these properties up, and what we're going to do is tie them to the controls. Again, I'm going to lay this out so we can see it a little bit better. So we've got this in here. In order to access the controls, I need to basically call into owner. So I'm going to need to hold on to owner. So let's create a field for owner. Let's store that off. Now that I've got that, I can call the getter and the setter. Now, I only really need the setter for the reverse text. So we can say owner.output label. This is going to be, so not text, this one will be content, equals value. So whatever the value is coming in, I can do that. And then on text type by user, all I need is the getter. So we're not using the other two as a part of our code. I could wire those up, but I'm just going to skip those for now. So we'll say this owner input text box. Oh, I did not add, let's see. Oh, there's my name, input text box. There it is. And this time it is the text property. So now that I am pulling from the text property and outputting to the content property the label, it seems like everything's working. Let's go and run the application. Let's test this out. There it is. We've got everything reversed and everything's working. So that concludes the application. Just a real quick rundown. So in this screen, or in the WPF window, I added the 3 controls here. Obviously, I ran into some problems when I copied and pasted from the internet. That happens from time to time. So pulling from the text box is definitely going to be a nice way to lay things out, and then you can do what you need to do. And then in the code behind, I added, for the button click, I added the call to submit for the mirror screen, and then held on to the owner and the constructor of the main window mirror screen, and then finally implemented the setter for reverse text and the getter for the text type by user. That's basically it. I hope it helps.